We believe and have always believed in this country that man was created in the image of God, that he was given talents and responsibilities and was instructed to use them to make this world a better place in which to live. And you see, this is the really great thing of America.
It's time to discover what binds us together, and finding it has the power to transform our world. That's what I believe. How about you? Well, hello, everyone. I'm Doug DeVos, and welcome back to Believe. It's great to have another opportunity to talk about the issues that impact our lives. And today we're going to talk about big tech. We've talked about it before on this program, but we want to talk about not only its problems, but really its solutions and the perspectives that we can learn about big tech so that we can form our own beliefs and not beliefs by what somebody else should do, but how we should think about these things. And of course, it's not up to us to tell you what to believe. It's up to us to kind of share some thoughts so you can come to those perspectives yourselves. So there's a lot of people who have opinions on how to address issues in our society, and certainly technology is one of them. And some of the solutions that many people offer maybe get narrowed into a certain range. But today we have a wonderful opportunity today with Peter Rex, who has started his own tech company, who's a tech CEO who has vast experience and a lot of perspective. So Peter, welcome. So great to have you here. Thanks for taking some time to talk with us today.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, Peter, first of all, you started your own company, and before we kind of dive into some of the things you've done, tell us a little bit of your story. How did that come into be? Tell us a little bit about your business so we can all get a good understanding of where you're coming from.
Yeah, Doug. So I'll start out by giving a really high-level, succinct summary of what we currently do. Then I'll give you a backdrop of how that came about. So
Great.
What Rex does is Rex builds technology to serve owners and operators in real estate. So we have 10 technology companies we've built, all solving the most lucrative, biggest pain points in the real estate industry, ranging from insurance to payments to asset management or investing. So we've got an elite tech team based here in Austin, moved it from San Francisco and Seattle from the West Coast a couple of years ago, which we can get into, I'm sure, as we run here. We've got deep domain real estate experience, which we'll come across as we're talking, and we've got a lot of assets in house that we own. About 10,000 apartments so billions of dollars of assets we manage as well in the real estate space, making for excellent testing ground for really serving our own needs. And that's it. The 10 companies are all in market, they have traction, and they're growing. So that's a quick summary of what we do at Rex. And then how did I get to this position of, running these technology companies? Well, back when I started, about 16 years ago in entrepreneurship, I came out of college like, many other kids coming out of college, not knowing what I was going to do, right? So I actually spent a couple of weeks in a Christian monastery and meditated and prayed in silence and talked to one of the monks there also for some spiritual direction here and there, but mainly spent time in prayer and tried to listen to that still quiet voice and understand what the Holy Spirit was asking me to do. And I felt called out of all things to go into entrepreneurship, and I had no business background at all. So I found my way trying to get into business, feeling a call, but not knowing what I was doing. So I came through ultimately the real estate side because people were willing to back assets rather than me. Cause who am I? I was a philosophy, political philosophy background type person, and then built up over time a couple $1 billion of assets in real estate, largely betting during the downturn of the great financial crisis, heavily doing a contrarian bet in the areas of Texas and Florida, even though I'm from New York. And along the way, I got a Harvard Law JD and a CPA as well, and took a couple bar exams and passed them as well. So that's a quick summary.
Wow, that's a fantastic summary. What a wonderful thing to do. One of the greatest things we could all think about is to take time to listen. And that's a big piece of why we want to do this podcast, so people can hear. And I love doing it so I can hear from you. To hear your story and take some time to listen to things so you can process and be thoughtful about next steps going forward from there. You do have one story from college that I'm aware of that I'd love you to tell about a class at Harvard that you struggled with a little bit and the professor.
Yeah, well, I didn't struggle with the class too much, but I I was, very comfortably skipping all the classes. So I was at Harvard Law, and I was, as a typical entrepreneur, doing a lot of entrepreneurial behaviors rather than sitting in class. So but the professor there was Elizabeth Warren, who currently, everyone knows who that is. And she, was one of the few professors that absolutely didn't like that idea. So she wants you to be there sitting there listening to, her spiel and whatever other students had to say during, just going there and sitting down. And that's not really the way I learn anyways. I learn better from books, and everyone learns differently, right? So I didn't want to do that. We had a disagreement about that. And eventually she issued some warnings over to me, which I, disregarded. And so she officially failed me. And
oh gosh, I love it.
Time in her entire history as a professor, which I guess had stretched over a couple of decades, is she's only failed one other person. So I felt, wow, that makes me feel real special. But I was able to, litigate my way back and argue my way back in to take the final exam, and I was able to, pass it, without too much stress. And I ended up getting a B in the course, so it was fine. But she had to do it. The way they grade is by blind. They don't even know who they're grading. So I argued to take the exam, and I said I understood the material, which I did. I just had to study it. So
yeah. I love it. That's such a great story, and not only because the personalities involved with Senator Warren, but just of how we all learn differently and we all approach things differently, and the entrepreneurial spirit, can take a different path in people's lives. And so the fact that finding the right way to learn the information or to process the information and be able to understand it and demonstrate that, we all do that a little differently.
Yeah, and if at the time, Doug, if I knew she was a Native American, I would have gone. It would have been more interesting, but she wasn't upfront about it at the time. So
that's right. Exactly. Oh, really good. I love it. Well, thank you for sharing some of that, of the background. So now here you are. You've built a technology company. You've been in this space. You've been in the early stages of starting a company, of being in the process. Help us understand what that was like in those early days working in this space, and really, as you talk about technology, it's the people behind the technology that are important. Help us understand what you experienced during that time.
Yeah. So, I mean, now, why are we in technology? Well, it's because of my background in entrepreneurship. I was building out on real estate. I noticed a huge amount of problems there. I also had an immense desire to serve everyone everywhere in the world. And tech is interesting in that I explain it like this. A lot of people don't understand how to make money off tech, or how do you invest in tech? How do you think about it? Well, it turns out, I think the secret's out, that tech is the most profitable type of investment in the world. And if you look at the top 5, even public companies now, I think all 5 of them are tech companies, even after the correction recently. So, and if you look at a lot of the wealthiest folks in the last, 20 years on the list, any of the newer ones, almost all the newer ones are from the tech side.
Sure.
So it's tremendously profitable. And why is that? Because you can create, I say this, it's almost as if you can create a beautiful chair and something you'd love to sit in, right? But it turns out you can create that beautiful chair, design it really well, but you can sell it, millions of times without having to manufacture the next chair. You just create it once and you replicate it and sell it. And each time you sell it, you can make money off it. So your upfront cost is only one time, your major upfront cost is building that chair. So it reflects almost like a real estate development in that sense. You put a lot of money up front with no cash flows, but then once it's up there, you then get the cash flows later. But unlike real estate development, there you could sell it again and again and again and again and again. Where real estate development, you build something, say you build 1,000 apartments, right? When you sell those, you can only sell one apartment. You can sell only the 1,000 apartments that you built. You can't go and sell them 1,000,000 times. Right. So that's the thing with tech, and that's why tech is so profitable. And what brought me in there was this desire to serve everybody everywhere in the world. So my personal motto is to serve Jesus in business. And that's been my personal motto since I got into business on my own. And I got that actually from Mother Teresa's sisters. So when I was back in the day, when I started at community college actually. And then I transferred to a place called Ave Maria College, which actually was up in Ypsilanti, Michigan, which is not as nice as Grand Rapids, from what I understand. So,
was that? I'm trying to. Who was involved with that school? For the founder of Domino's, as I recall,
yes,
Tom Donahue. Yeah,
Tom
Monahan. Yeah, right. Okay,
good. So I went there, and then after that, I transferred to Georgetown University. But when I was at Georgetown, I started a group called Mother Teresa's Hoyas. And at Mother Teresa's Hoyas, what happened was I was just getting kind of, I was thinking, I don't do anything for the poor. And I was, just kind of in the area where Georgetown University is very wealthy. And they don't even allow metro stops there to keep the less keep people from coming into that neighborhood, that area. Right.
Wow.
Which ends up creating a really rich pocket, almost a bubble. And I thought, man, being a Christian, you listen to the gospel, you got to serve people, serve the poor, help people. And as a college student, I just one night said, I got to do something. So I ended up staying up like about 3 a.m. or so, just thinking about what can I do. And then I had this idea of researching, well, what could I serve? And I found Mother Teresa's sisters they were in Southeast DC, so they're opposite side. And I thought, okay, that's a good idea. So in the morning, I got up fairly early and I just started taking a bus to another bus. Showed up on site. I said, hey, I'm a student at Georgetown. And they're like, Georgetown? We never had a student from Georgetown ever. And I said, I want to serve here. It was an AIDS hospice. So a hospice for AIDS patients. And I went in, ended up serving with them. And then I started a group behind that. So we used to go in and serve. But their motto is serving Jesus and the poor. So, and what I did there is I took that motto. And they're also no nonsense, really principled people. It was great for Georgetown students coming in. They would, people that would never listen to me are definitely going to listen to these tough nuns telling them about, pro-life issues, whatever any issue you name it, they'll be very direct, Sure. Great role model. And in doing that, they had the motto, serving Jesus and the poor. And I took that and I put serving Jesus in business. That's been my motto since. So once I felt I called in the business, I thought, you could serve Jesus anywhere. And entrepreneurship is, I think, especially a vacuum where you don't have a lot of folks that are in there bringing the Christian message in there, and that the power of the Christian message is perfect for entrepreneurship if you think about it, because who are we as entrepreneurs? What are we as a Christian, right? We are followers of a person who lives and is here with us, right? And that's Jesus. He's resurrected. So we are the people of the resurrection. So when you want to talk about, creation, I mean, we are the people of creation. We're people of the new creation. And constantly we need to be building the new heavens and the new earth. We're people of the resurrection. And I think that really flows really well into, someone who's in entrepreneurship. That is very much almost a source of energy for me to be out there trying to look at what is it, how can we make it better? How can we recreate it? How can we create something brand new that can make the lives of people better through business? And business is great because the responsivity is right from your consumer, from the person who gets the good. They can either pay you or not. If you don't do well, then you're out, which is good because it's a discipline, right? So, but anyways, we could go all day on this, I'm sure, Doug, but I'll kick it back over to you.
Wow. It's just fascinating how you follow your faith and how you see that you can express your faith. And for all of us who are living our lives every day, whatever role we may have, we still have a chance to live our values, to express our faith, and to serve other people. I'm involved with the National Constitution Center, and when they talk about the words of the Declaration of Independence and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, happiness was not a selfish sort of happiness. Happiness, as defined in that time, and through a lot of people smarter than me who have talked about it, it's about how you find fulfillment or purpose and meaning by serving others. And so, again, the linkages are really important. That's how you find happiness. It's not about yourself. So you're finding ways through your business to enhance the lives of people, to enhance the lives of your customers. But is that always the way people think about it in technology, or even in business in general, not just technology? But you've had a window into there. Talk a little bit about, is that consistent, or is that kind of a very different way to look at things?
Well, I think the proof is in the pudding, right? So, you know the tree by its fruit, and the fruit is not good, right? And I think we've tasted that fruit of the last couple of years of tech, and we can see the fruit is not good. Well, why is the fruit not good? It's because the tree, there's problems in the tree out there in Silicon Valley and Seattle, and that's where all the tech is coming from. If you look at Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Apple, etc., Stripe, Visa, all these companies deplatforming people, censoring people, going right against all these liberties that we stand for, that we've all benefited from. Well, they are obviously have anti-American ideals. I would also say, and I think I'm correct about this, is they have anti-Christian ideals as well. And the reality is also, and this is perhaps an even more important point, is something I noticed out there is they actually don't really have concrete ideals. They have ever-changing ideals sort of that take on the zeitgeist of the time, which is a very dangerous type of situation where they have a vacuum. They don't have solid principles. And I sometimes boil that down to being Judeo-Christian principles. Judeo-Christian principles meaning that doesn't mean you're Jewish or Christian, but you have these principles that you think are good for society. So Benjamin Franklin was a deist, right? And he wasn't such a strict deist that he thought God didn't do anything. He actually thought that God was involved in the revolution. He felt Providence's hand was behind it. Now, George Washington, the key founder of all, was a devout Christian. And he's one of my heroes. And so I know a lot about him. Now, he was a devout Christian, and he led this system that created the biggest tent possible. Now, the thing about Christian ideals is these Christian ideals are the biggest tent that you could possibly imagine, because it allows anybody to believe anything, even if they disagree with us. It even says to love your enemy. But if you don't have these principles, these rules of behavior, some of them are actually rules of what you can't do. Some of them in Christianity are rules of what you should do, such as, love your enemy, these proactive rules, and serve those who are in need, what you do to the least of my people that you do unto me, these types of prescriptions to help and love others. But we also have the 10 Commandments that restrains negative behavior. Now, if you don't have these things, as you don't actually have grounded principles, then you're a very dangerous man if you have power, because then you are willing to do whatever you think is right in your own judgment, but not tethered by what has proven to be right and wrong and what is apart from you, as in what is true. So if you don't have these beliefs and you have tremendous power, which the tech industry does, that's a big problem. And one of the things we're doing on a layer beneath here is that on the top layer, I explained that we are serving owners and operators with technology and real estate, right? In the real estate industry, we're serving owners and operators with tech. However, a deeper layer is we are disrupting woke tech. Our idea here is disrupt the tech industry, the woke tech industry. And it's not just big tech, it's all of tech. It's GoFundMe blocking truckers from doing their thing, getting nonprofit monies out in Canada. It's Stripe derailing people off payments, not allowing them to get money. It's GoDaddy getting Texas Right to Life deplatformed on just a website service. AWS removing people from servers. Amazon, the bookseller and the online sales retail company, kicking off books like Ryan Anderson's book about gender issues. It's going after the whole tech area has bad soil, and that's creating trees that are really bearing poisonous fruit. And that's part of why I moved the company out of that soil, that environment, into a better soil here in Texas.
Well, Peter, you have unpacked, or you have touched on so many important things. I'm going to try to go back a little bit for some of those things, and maybe ask you to dive a little bit deeper. Tell us a little bit more about some of those things. You talk about this idea, and I'll start with this one. There's power without principles. And there's a lot of power in this technology. You mentioned all the decisions that people have made or companies have made that maybe in a vacuum for somebody they made sense, but over the course of time, they may not make sense for those of us who kind of look at it maybe in that way. How do we spot that? How do we spot that? And what's a way for action to be taken to combat that? Because you also talked about disrupting woke tech, and there's a lot of talk about government regulation, how government should be more involved. Maybe take those power principles and disrupting woke tech. Elaborate a little bit further on those to help us get your perspective a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing, Doug, is when I saw I'd be talking to you, I thought, oh man, Doug and we could talk about a lot of things. We could go in a lot of directions because we share a lot of common themes here. You're massively successful in entrepreneurship and have done wonderful things. You and also your family has figured out a way to continue this, right? And you share deeply held Christian views that I also share as well. So there are some things we can go. So we'll take it one at a time here, and probably not be able to get into everything that we could go into. But when we think about the tech problem as a whole, and I talk about these, the absence of virtue combined with power. So if you have power without any virtue, any grounding, essentially, they often talk about values, but values are not tethered to timeless principles, right? And this is something I'm very familiar with in San Francisco and Seattle. You have a lot of folks that have made a lot of money, many of whom are not well educated outside of technical things. but in the technical area, they are genius level. It'd be like, Tiger Woods or something,
Sure,
But
sure.
the difference is Tiger Woods is, no, I'm just making up. The difference is these people actually control the rails of our commerce, Amazon, these retail companies, but they also control our data where we store it, which is the new economy, right? You're running everything's online. We're talking right here on a Zoom podcast and or on a face-to-face podcast here that you are going to publish, and people can watch it using cutting edge technology that you guys use to get this done in a good way. But viewers are going to watch this from wherever they are, right? Throughout the world. So this is the new way. This is actually the modern economic and communication public square. So the public square, Twitter, Facebook, etc. You have even where you keep your websites. And so a tremendous amount of power. Now, I've already mentioned how profitable tech is. I think I mentioned this because, and by the way, I'm saying these things, but I'm not some kind of, person that's out there saying, oh, everyone else needs to go do this and this and this. No, I'm doing this. I'm already been full all in. I put in tremendous amounts of my own blood, sweat, and tears and a lot of cash into what I'm doing, building this all out. A tremendous sacrifice, really, and doing what we're doing. And so is our team. Our leadership's taken massive sacrifice to do what we're doing. And It's not easy, right? And we're fighting. And we've also been outspoken publicly against these other companies. And we are standing somewhat alone, but we are going to, and all you need is really one anyways. We've got more than one on our team, but we are building out of Texas to create a new tech ecosystem and disrupt the woke tech industry. So I'm putting my cash where my mouth is, and we're doing what we got to do. But so I just wanted to say I'm not some kind of hypocrite saying everyone's got to do this. I'm actually doing it myself.
Right, exactly.
So, but what I'd say is, well, this technology is massively profitable. It's just one thing I'm making a point of, because a lot of what people, conservatives, Christians, libertarians, some libertarians as well, don't quite understand how profitable this is. And we need these folks to get involved, because right now the amount of folks that invest in tech is very minuscule. It's like one out of I'd say 10,000 actually understand and invest in tech. And they're all located generally in the Silicon Valley splash zone area or Seattle area, the zone out there on the West Coast. A lot of other folks don't quite get it, so they're staying on the sidelines. However, they've got to understand this is massively profitable. This is not, double bottom line type thing where you kind of don't make that. No, you make massive money here. And attaching a mission to it, you even make more anyways, because companies with a mission actually make more money anyways. But the people on the right, this is a separate issue of, I'd almost want to do a full podcast just on that, how we got to get folks that are Christian, people of values, people of goodwill, jumping into mission-based, hard driving technology companies. We can do that separately another time, or we can get into.
All right, I'm going to take you up on that, Peter. I'm going to take you up on that. We'll do another one on that in the future.
Yeah, we will. I'm down, because this needs to get out, and we got to get folks. They got to understand this. This needs to happen. Otherwise, we won't shift the base of power. This won't happen. You can't just have people out here we need help. We're not going to do it alone, right? So we got to get people come behind us. And we need people to understand generally so they stay involved and they get part of this new economy. Otherwise, the folks that get the participation of the economy. So not only they control the rails of communication, that's just technically they control the rails of communication. So it's absolutely important that we get the right entrepreneurs that are behind this, right? But they also make massive amounts of profitability. Take a look at, who has been aggregating the most billions and billions, right? It's folks concentrated in the tech industry. Now, that is raw power as well. In addition to the fact they're controlling our public square and all these other things, they're making a ton of money. And that money has raw power. I mean, you're a businessman and you know the power of money, right? And in our economy, America is an entrepreneurial-led economy. It has been from the beginning. George Washington was an entrepreneur. So was Benjamin Franklin. I mean, that makes us very different than the Europeans, right? Who generally had a classified system that didn't quite allow, the middle, lower class any room to really move up. Back in the day. Now they're becoming a little bit more like us, but the heart of America was opportunity, really, and this mobile is allowing people to access things. So America has been led from the beginning by entrepreneurs, and the difference now is we have entrepreneurial leaders that do not actually share Judeo-Christian values. They have been, I would say, coming out of these systems that they've been brainwashed in, universities and high schools, honestly, and stuff like that. They get brainwashed into thinking actually being an American something to apologize about, as if. Yes, everyone's had bad things, but America is it's a tremendous blessing. You basically won the lotto if you're born in this country. And if you don't realize it, then you can leave. Why are you here? Like, and if
Sure.
you're just not quite sure, but you want to learn, well, go get on a flight ticket and go to other countries and go see what it's like and spend some time in some other country. You'll see how many people would love to become a citizen of this country.
Sure.
So our American system's amazing, and it's also set up by entrepreneurs, and we got to get people involved and active in it. But anyways, I'm kind of running on that hole. I'll push it back over to you, Doug.
Okay. Well, no, I want you to keep going there. Let's talk about you move. You mentioned that in passing, but that's a big deal to move your company, to be in this ecosystem. There's a lot of, a lot of the economic development work that you'll hear in any state. You got to create this ecosystem. You got to have all the people. It's really the people. So you got to put the colleges or the technical universities or whatever there to attract the businesses because they're looking for people. And you were in that place with that technology, but you felt you needed to find great people with technology skills, but as you say, connected to the values that were important. So you moved to tech. That's a huge undertaking. And so talk about that a little bit, the move, how you've experienced that move, and then how that is important in your perspective to creating that disruption in the technology industry and in our economy as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and because we share common values in Christianity, I could really speak from what I'd call my third layer, my deepest layer of reasons of why I do things, and where I draw a lot of my energy from, right? And that comes from Christian ideals. I mean, every morning I listen to the scripture, and I meditate on philosophical and theological things from Pope Benedict XVI. His thinking on is brilliant. So I'll meditate upon that as well afterwards, after I'm done with the scripture, about different concepts. Today they're talking about the resurrection. He had some writings on this. So anyway, so I'll draw from this depths of scripture and the gospel, really, because the greatest entrepreneur of all time is Jesus Christ, right? So he had the most radical ideas that still we can't follow, and it came from nowhere else on the earth. I've been to 100 countries, right? Every time I go to countries, I always go to the religious centers and cultural centers, no matter where it is, whether it's mosques or Hindu temples, whatever it is. I go right in there and I ask a lot of questions. Nowhere on earth, anywhere, you find anything so radical as love your enemy, or even this idea of loving, this command to love others. It had no other source besides in that area in Jerusalem. That's where it comes from Jesus. So, but so let me quote from scripture a little bit here. Just one little quote that I sort of got in my head when I was in the West Coast, and it's, what profit does a man gain if he gets the whole world, but he loses his soul in the process?
Right.
And I think we all know the power of that quote, right? But what I thought on that was, what profit do I gain if I build this company out over the next 30, 60 years, but I lose the soul of the company? Because then it goes on to do bad things. And we've seen this with other companies that were built by good entrepreneurs. Look at Disney right now with Disney's. I mean, it's unbelievable what Disney's doing. But
sure.
But Walt Disney, he was a Christian guy with a very, very American ideals, and the company's now, the soul of the company is somewhat off. But anyway,
we could do a whole nother podcast on that one, but we won't.
But that gets my point.
Important.
Occupied by bad folks who then can use it for bad and to suppress people. So, or to corrupt their children and cut around the parents or whatever. In the case of Disney. But when I think about the company, you build it out. So the reality is, when you build a company, who really runs the company? Does a CEO, like me, run the company? No, I don't. I set vision. I help select leaders. I try to set protocols and systems and really pick excellent investment opportunities of allocations of our human resources and our money in order to drive the company forward. That's really what I have to focus on, because nobody else can do that. And I need to do that. The reason why no one else can do it is because I have the global view of the company. And that's what a great CEO needs to do, right? But then who really runs the company? Well, it's all the employees. Well, where do you get your employees from? Do they just come from like your imagination? You think, oh, I'm going to go hire people? No, they tend to come from your local environment. So in Seattle, you're going to get them from the Seattle area. In San Francisco, you can get them from the San Francisco area. 80% of the time, right? I mean, yes, sure, people will move and everything else, but generally you're going to pull from your local base. And I've seen this with other companies that, you say Amazon, right? So for example, Amazon, I noticed it with them, where I noticed the company was far more radicalized left than Jeff Bezos was. So Bezos is the founder CEO of Amazon. I noticed that it was far more radical left than he was. But at a certain point, can he actually control that? No, he can't really control what's going to happen, because you have too many folks like that in your company. And really, personnel is policy. So, I mean, you have all these people and they're going to make their own calls and they're going to promote agendas that could be very radical. And actually, he's a libertarian, at least he was in the past. I don't know currently, but he's a libertarian in orientation, about allowing freedoms. I mean, that company has done opposite type things. They're not the worst, culprit of all of them, but still you see where they're going. And that I noticed, and I thought, man, that will happen to my company ultimately if I'm out in that soil. So I made that move to Texas in order to be on the right soil, because Texas is got, a pretty fierce population. I'm sure people realize that. And it's got about 30 million people and they got a great economy and they're calling a lot of the right shots. So I made that move for that reason. And also for reasons for the employee base, much better to surround myself in a place like Texas. Also, when I looked at families and affordable housing that people can afford so people can buy homes, Texas is also better in those accounts and many others as well. And I had increasingly become concerned on the West Coast of this environment having a negative impact on ability of someone to raise their kids. And I could keep going and other negative things, but key points there is pick a better spot to build a company that causes human flourishing and has the right elements in order to both technically, pioneering wise. And it is more difficult to get technical talent here, but they are here and we're able to pull them. Also, Austin sells well. We're in Austin, Texas. So it's a good sale. And you can get other folks that are kind of the rebels in Silicon Valley and Seattle that are like, hey, I want out too, so we'll be pulling these guys in as well. So,
yeah. Well, that's a great commitment. It's a great thoughtful nature, and for all of us in our personal lives, who you surround yourself with. Who are your friends? I remember my parents early on saying the friends that you have, the people you're with, they're going to create that environment around you. And I love the idea that the business is an extension of the entrepreneur or the founder, whoever it is, and that you need everybody to be on the same page or else you'll lose the soul of the business. We did a number of years ago at Amway, we looked at our 50th anniversary. We looked at the top, 10 companies 50 years ago when we were started, and 4 of them didn't exist anymore. It was a real eye opener that that when the company loses its way, it loses everything. It loses itself, and so being aware of that is important. So thank you for going through. I think that gives us a lot, and all of us listening to this, thinking about those connections and connecting the dots in that way. So thank you for doing that. Let me shift.
And Doug, just to on that a little bit, because we're spiritual beings, right? We're not just flesh. We're not like, we're spiritual beings, and we take on, and we're iron sharpens iron, right? And you take on a bit of what's around you, or you got to fight against it, and it could help build you up, or it could break you down. And resistance is good; it builds muscle, but too much of it and it breaks it. And you need to have folks around that you can draw from that share ideals, because they effectively embody the company and they actually run the company eventually, right? So
yeah. And those employees, as you talked, and you spent a lot of time thinking about families. A lot of the companies or people that I know here in Grand Rapids, small, medium-sized companies, whatever, when they're a founder, when they're running it, they think about their employees and their families all the time. And if they ever have to make a decision, a downturn, to let somebody go, it just breaks them. It breaks all of us whenever we have that sort of stuff, because these are faces, these are real, the impact on a family. But for you to be proactively thinking about then how that continues, the soul of the company touches those families, and you've made provision for that.
Yep. Yeah, and
Exactly.
even something simple like buying a home is not possible on the West Coast for so many people.
Sure.
And even some of our executives, they would be, pay $3-4 million for like a small house. What is going on here? It's like a rinky-dink house. And in Texas, money goes a lot further, and part of it's because I think it largely derives from their values. Their underlying principles that they operate under leads them to make decisions that are pro-human and pro-human flourishing. And those decisions get made, a bit removed from the source, so you don't notice where it's coming from. But when you have an underlying sort of anti-human belief system, that shows itself in different ways. And one of the ways I think it shows itself on the West Coast is extremely costly housing, because there's no industry there's industries that are as much about supply demand when you want to hit price, But real estate's very instructive of how that works. If you lock supply and demand goes up, and demand naturally either goes up or stays constant, then you can't really lock supply because the supply actually degrades in value over the years, right? So a certain amount of those houses will have to get removed. And if supply is locked or growing, then what happens? Price goes up like crazy. And then you have inflation as well, so price generally goes up. So when they lock in the supply out there, they don't allow developers to develop, then all you do is you just put the screws to the middle class and the working class folks. But you know what? It's not that important to you if you don't value humanity that much, because you have other things more important than humanity, such as, climate change or something, whatever it might be. That's your new thing more important than humanity.
Sure.
Today, it's whatever it might be, but it could be something else. It could be, some crazy transgender idea that they want to push out. And that becomes top of mind, most important, while everyone's paying like, $8 in gas a gallon or something. It's like they're thinking about like, we got to get a transgender. I mean, it's just it. But where does this all come from? These are just symptoms of this greater problem of being a basically anti-human, not pro-human in their approach.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Really important for us to understand that. Okay. Let me shift gears again here a little bit. You talked about the rails of commerce. That's what technology is providing today. And that the way we interact and communicate with each other, make it the public square. This is how we talk. This is how we communicate. This is how we connect if we can't physically be in the same place with people. And so there's a lot of people that would say, well, if it's a public square, it's the public good, then obviously the government needs to go in and tell us what to do with this. How, and whether it's through regulation or taxation or whatever the case may be, help us understand the role that government or government regulation could or should or shouldn't have, in the tech space or in the entrepreneurial business space in general. But how, maybe focus a little bit on tech. How have you seen it play out? How do you see the things they're talking about or thinking about, and what do you see of the impact? Help us understand that a little bit.
Yeah. So Doug, when this is an important, I'd say, more policy point, but in the U.S. is important for the people in general, because it should be still a country run by the people, right? By and for the people. So it's important for the people to understand this, is that, first of all, I find it somewhat ironic that, and really it's something we got to pause and reflect on, the fact that we even have people who are conservatives that are out there and Christians saying the government's going to save us. I mean, that's already pause and say, hey, hold on, what are we talking about?
That's the first time we should go, whoa. Wait.
There's a reason why when we finished off in 1776, we finished off the revolution eventually when we won, that we have a Second Amendment, gun rights, right? And freedom of speech. What are these Bill of Rights? What are they against? The Bill of Rights are against the government. It's the same idea of the Magna Carta. It was against the king. It's rights against the king, abusing his authority. So, well, why are you worried about the government abusing authority? Because there's a tendency there if you empower it too much, right? So we got to be careful with the government, giving them too much power. Now, I do think that I'm not an extreme libertarian by any means, but I am libertarian oriented in that sense, and I think any properly sensible person should be libertarian oriented, because you got to have some, governments have shown throughout history a tendency to abuse their power when given the chance to do so. And I think everyone knows enough about history to probably know that. Obviously, we can go into tons of examples here.
Sure.
Take a look at what I say, what we got to really watch out for is going from being in the frying pan to being in the fire. The frying pan being, tech. Tech is bad. Yes, there's a problem. But if we jump over into the government's hand, we're never getting out of that trap, because the government doesn't tend to get smaller. It doesn't tend to let go of what it grabs onto easily. So you look at the Roe versus Wade situation with abortion, right? You had a government overstep, clearly a legislation from the bench. Now, our system is a democratic system where the people should select what they want through their representatives that actually legislate on their behalf. But you had in Roe versus Wade, you had Supreme Court justices step in and make basically politicize the courts, where they pushed onto the entire American public, like a tyrant would, these rights that they found in the penumbra of the Constitution, which means the shadows of the Constitution. Total nuts, total crazy. It would be something you never think would happen, and was not envisioned as possible by the founders of the country. but it did happen. It took like 40 years to get that ripped out of their claws, right? Now it's back to the people where it belongs, where the people can make their decision. That's our system, right? So in other words, you got to be careful. Whatever you give to the government, man, you don't get it back easy. So and then also you got to take a look. Silicon Valley, yes, very radicalized, crazy at this point, right? They're out of it because they're in an echo chamber. They're very radical. They probably think they're moderate, honestly, if you had a conversation with them. They're not, though. America is left of the rest of the world. I've been to 100 countries. I can tell you we are left of the rest of the world, but Silicon Valley is extremely falling off the map left. They're radicalized, right? Now where is DC? DC's probably, I don't know, somewhere in between America, working class, and the radicalized Silicon Valley. So they're not even as bad, yet they are radical left. Now, what's different about DC is if you ask people in DC, they actually know that they're like pretty far liberal left, right? They have some idea.
Well, that's good. I guess that's a good thing, huh?
What good they have interest, but they're aware of where they stand, right? But still, you're talking like probably 70% of them more. It's a lot in DC. It's representing the entire country, and it's not representative of the country. So we got to be careful of giving them anything, and including trying to regulate these companies. And the idea that they're going to regulate these folks. Maybe they need to do some of that. Fine. Do what they got to do. Just be careful what they're doing. Be surgical in the approach and realize that will not be the long-term solution because it just won't be. Like, think about it. No argument they've made actually makes sense that will be our solution. If you take Facebook and you break it up into 50 Facebooks, great. You get 50 people, 50 different Facebooks, same types of people running their, systems, right? That's not gonna be any better. You need to create a new tech eco. You got to disrupt the whole woke industry, and you got to do it through entrepreneurship. That's the long-term solution. Now, that is not easy. That requires action and, long-term. You need entrepreneurial capital that's got some guts. And you also need people with guts that are entrepreneurs coming in and entrepreneurial people joining these folks and pushing out and creating something new. And that is very different than what currently is. That is the way forward because then you build new infrastructure run by people that are aligned with our values. Now they can actually take it to the house and compete with them. Currently, that doesn't exist. So if we wanted to say, oh, you know what, Facebook's so bad and Twitter's so bad, I'm never going to post on there anymore because I don't want to participate in that platform. Well, guess what? That's like saying I don't want to use a gun in a war because it's made by the other side. It's like, well, guess what? Like, what are you going to do? Fight with a knife? Everyone's got guns now. So in other words, you have to use it. It's impossible not to use it. It is the public square, but there is no alternative. There's no competition. And the competition needs to come from a robust new source of capital that is aligned, that is getting into tech, and also entrepreneurs that are aligned with Judeo-Christian principles. And what we need to do is bet on the early stage tech companies, the ones that will then rule in the next 10 to 20 years. You need to start betting on them now. Because it's the same thing that they did with Roe versus Wade. The way they overturned that, they took a longer term view and they played the strategic game to win. Let's take long-term games and win rather than short. Like some of the ideas you see, like Truth Social and these things, I'm a fan, like do their thing or whatever, but it's not a very strategic approach because you're going after effectively a monopoly and you're trying to go after network effect head on. It's like, oh, we got to go take Berlin, so let's go invade Berlin directly. During World War II, well, it turns out Berlin's fairly well secured. And you're just going to just be like a slaughterhouse. You got to go in through like a Normandy strategy. So anyways, what I think we got to do here is bet on early stage, take a long view, bet on entrepreneurs that are aligned to Judeo-Christian values. And I'm doing this myself. That's what I'm doing. We're blowing out. We're even taking investors as well, which we need to grow. But other people need to get involved and become entrepreneurs, get into it, join companies like ours. I went to Hillsdale, for example, year and a half ago or so.
I love it. Hillsdale. Yeah. What a great place.
Great school. Exactly. I went there and part of it was I wanted to make the alumni base aware of these problems. But part of it is that, I'm serving our company and I want to get talent like that to get into tech. They don't have to join my company. That's fine. I mean, I prefer they do, but they need to get involved somehow long-term because we need people that are able to reason and that are serious people to get into the tech industry and start early though. We got to get the early stage companies now are the ones that will rule they will overthrow the tech industry in the next 10 to 20 years. Cause that's the creative destruction cycle that happens within capitalism. So,
yeah. Some of us are like me, I'm old enough to remember, when Walmart came in and it was very disruptive to the retail space. And it's like everyone's, what's going to happen? They're going to dominate, and they just you draw the line. They're going to continue to grow. Well, then Amazon comes in and disrupts Walmart, even though Walmart still is around. But Amazon comes. Someone's going to come in, and if we trust our system, like you say, invest in it. It takes time. It takes patience. But don't ask our government. What I'm hearing from you is, don't ask the government to try to come in and fix it. One, because they don't know how to do that. Two, it doesn't work, and three, it could create more problems than in the as you say, than we had in the first place. So that's a good thing for us to keep through. Is to have faith. If we believe in the entrepreneurial system, we believe in our style of economic values. Then we can have faith that we'll be able to deal with these things. May not happen quickly, but we'll be able to deal with it. In the time that we have here, let's kind of talk a little bit about. You talked about the principles. You've touched on them throughout. Then maybe ask you to expand a little bit more on these ideas of free speech, of religious liberty. You've talked about dignity and respect for humanity. Talk about and help us understand how you've built those principles in, and how, as VC, as new startups come through, how those principles can be built in, and how we can see them, or how we can support that happening. Because as you said, this echo chamber of conformity that seems to have happened in big tech really disrupts that, where this idea of free speech is sometimes in some places a foreign concept, but for many of us it's absolutely vital for who we are, because you can't take away what I think. My speech is only a reflection of what I think, and so to take that away takes away my right to think or believe the way I do. So talk a little bit about that, and then we'll have some closing comments after that. But talk a little bit about that. Help us understand how you see that, how you put that into play, how that works in your space.
Yeah, and this whole need for new leadership, right, is not just about. This is one thing I try to make a point to people on, because the freedom of speech thing is something they notice. It's more obvious, right, when people get deplatformed from Twitter, shadow banned, or on Facebook, whatever they're doing, messing with the algorithms behind the scenes. Biasing against. I ran into a guy from Heroic Media at an event recently in Napa. I was giving a talk there with Kevin Roberts from Heritage Foundation. We were discussing these issues, and afterwards, a guy came up to me and said, "Hey, actually, even Google is messing with our ads, and the ads are out targeting women who are pregnant to give them the opportunity to keep the life, and where they make them mess with their ads and put things on it that actually lowers the chance of a click through." So,
oh, wow. And
they've been getting more aggressive on it. He was explaining this to me, and I thought, okay, so you can see how the things that we notice are just, they're problems, and they're a huge issue, right? Freedom of speech and all those other things. But there's other issues too. Commerce, how we're doing all of our commerce a lot of it's going online. It is already online. It will stay online. It's not all of it, but it's a lot of it, right? It's a new economy. And then you have all the payments too. Your payment structures are going online. They already are online. Visa is located in Silicon Valley. And so is Stripe, which is a new payments product, and same with Square. A lot of these payments things, they're able to deplatform people, and they have deplatformed people. And same with nonprofit funding like GoFundMe and GoDaddy. So I mentioned that before, but I just mentioned it again because and that gets to how I am setting up the company and why I can't really just pick off one or two different problems. What I need to do is, and what I'm doing is, and for clarity, we build technology companies. Now we're taking direct investors into us, but these are direct investments into our companies. So we're not at this stage, we're not taking venture capital funds to invest in us. We're going past the middleman, taking direct capital in. So, and this for a number of reasons, including I don't want a VC, a venture capitalist fund, and they love entrepreneurs like me, but I don't want them, and they'll tell me everything I want to hear. But I know law pretty well. I know the law fairly well. Yeah, I know it, and I'm practicing the area, and so I understand what's in their contracts, and effectively they can remove me as CEO and do a lot of other things for reasons that could be pretexts. And I'm out there, taking stances, for example, that a lot of them won't like, or their boards won't like. So recently, I took a stance publicly as a company and my own account, but then we put it out there, and it's from the company as well, that so what happened was when Roe v. Wade was overturned, I thought, wow, that's great for the country. It's like a Dred Scott thing, right? It's been overturned finally. Great. We finally have protection for human life in the womb. And everybody knows it's human life. It's scientifically proven. It's linear logic. You know it as well. And by using reasoning it also. For any three areas, you can conclude the same thing. So on that issue of human life, I said, okay, I'm not going to gloat. I'll stay quiet. But then what happened was 250 CEOs came out in favor of paying people to kill their babies, and they'll move them out of the country to kill their babies. So using abortion with a hired doctor to kill the baby. So I say it in a very grotesque way because I want to get to what actually is the issue, is killing babies and abortion. So, and it's hard to hear and hard to even say, but I say it because it's true. And I sat there and I thought, okay, I'm not going to say anything now. And yet 250 CEOs are out there speaking on their mind. And every tech CEO, not one of them said anything pro-life. So what I said was, that's it. In the morning, I woke up and I was thinking very early in the morning, it was like 4 a.m. or so. I was thinking about, saying something, because I'm not going to stay silent. If we had a bunch of people came out and said pro-life things, I would have just been fine. I wouldn't have said anything. But since no one did anything, I said, that's it. I'm going to say something. I can't allow, I cannot remain quiet in the face of this injustice, and also in the face of this type of leadership standing all for one side, which is not representative of America, by the way. If you talk to most Americans, most people, even the ones who are pro-abortion, they know it's like a nasty thing. It's like slavery. The ones who were pro-slavery, it wasn't like they're all like, slavery is great. I mean, very few people thought it was great. They actually all were like,
not great.
It's a terribly evil thing that we have to, we can't change. We have to keep it for different reasons. It's similar to abortion. Almost nobody thinks abortion's good. Almost no one. I mean, a couple of very few radical, crazy lunatics, maybe, but that's it. And I don't even know who these people are. I've never talked to them. Even guys at Harvard Law, we had a debate about it. And by the way, you can never lose this debate about the abortion issue. You always win the pro-life debate. It's very easy to win because it's very obvious. It's like saying a Jew is human. It's like, yes, obviously the Jewish person is human, and instead of depicting him as a problem, which is what they were doing, say no, the problem's not them, it's you, and that's a human being. But anyway, so what I did was I said, 250 are saying this. I'm going to say something. So what we did was I said, I'm going to pay for adoption. That's a very Christian thing to do, right? It's very pro-life, but it's also good. It's a goodness thing, which we like to step out on goodness issues, right? And I said, all right, I'm going to come out and do something. And I'm going to say, we're going to pay for adoption. And we decided to pay the most, whatever company we found was going to pay for an abortion, we will pay for an adoption. We'll match the highest amount. So $7,500 is what they're paying as an incentive to have someone as an incentive to get an abortion. So we have an incentive, and we announced that, and we published it in Newsweek. Actually, I was surprised they got that published, but we put it in Newsweek, and we've actually had Tim Bush, who is great, man. He runs the NAP Institute and a bunch of other great people. He's
great guy.
He's doing the same thing with his company now, and I've heard a few other folks are doing the same thing as well. So we took that stance publicly. And, ironically, that morning, when at the company, when I got in, some of the guys from our investment team wanted to meet with me. And these guys are solid. They're great people, but they want to meet with me about this issue. And they said they didn't even know what I was going to do. That morning, I'd woke up with the decision, I'm going to do something. So I come in and they meet with me about the fact that I take controversial stances, because I'd taken some other stances as well. And they specifically brought up the pro-life saying, hey, we appreciate it if you don't say something, because it makes our job a lot harder. And they said, the investment world doesn't like this. And I said, okay. And I thought about it. I want to hear them out fully, really listen, But I said to them, what would you want me to do if it was the 1930s and they were rounding up the Jews? Do you want me to sit there and not say anything? What do you want me to do? Yeah. And at first they were about to argue to say, yeah, just don't say anything. And then they just stopped themselves, because that's crazy. Because it's a human being. And I said, is there any question there's a human being? And they said, no, there's no question. It is a human. Everyone knows that. I said, okay. So you want me to say something or not? So, because I'm like, I don't feel like I have a choice at this point, because no one's saying anything. No Christian leader was standing up saying anything. So I said, I have to. So basically, what was ironic, though, was the day I was about to, was the day they want to talk to me about this issue. And I thought, wow, it was almost like it was a day that maybe they would have dissuaded me not to, but I decided, no, we're going to and did it, But
already there.
But to totally pivot on a different point is, there's so many issues here, right? That leadership has an influence on America. We're talking about entrepreneurs right now have a bully pulpit. People listen to you. A lot of young people look up to entrepreneurs, right? That are successful. And they reach out, they want to know how they should live their life. They look for guidance. And there's such a lack of guidance in the public square, right? And so I see it as also a burden that we need folks that can actually be good leaders in so many areas, making so many decisions, not just decisions to make sure you don't censor people. Yes, we don't censor people. That's obvious. Don't do that. Decisions that you don't deplatform someone just because you disagree with them. Even, if my neighbor is, whatever, drag queen or something, like, I might tell my kids, we disagree with this lifestyle, but we love that person.
You love the person.
And
absolutely.
Yes, if they need help, whatever it is, I'm going to help them.
Yeah.
I don't care who they are or whatever their lifestyle is. Like, I'm going to love them, and that's what we got to do, right?
Yeah.
And this affects, so personnel is policy. That's my approach right now, and we'll codify things later. But the codification of things follows the internal virtues. So we got to hire people virtuous, and we've been doing that. And we've got an amazing team, people that, I one of my philosophies is hire people better than yourself, and you become like that. And we've got people even in my team that helps out with the media stuff that are, I would say they're better people than me, which is probably not so hard actually, but I admire them in different areas. And then I start finding myself getting better in different areas, right? So I've hired ahead of myself on people. It's kind of like when you marry, you want to marry up, right? Which I did.
Exactly.
Up, right? So you want to hire up, and that's what we're doing. That's our policy, because the people will do all these decisions on their own. They'll decide, okay, we're going to go not hire. They make hiring decisions too, right? So they'll say, you know what? I'm not going to hire this person. They are obviously a radical type person, because we have a lot of folks from the West Coast that try to apply to our company. And they'll, someone might say, oh, great, but, they have spent last, 10 years at Facebook. And how could you be at Facebook during all this and not leave? If the person can't answer that question, they're not going to get through. They're not going to be hired. Because how could you stay and participate? Even if you're world class, how can you participate the whole time? And by the way, we do have people that were at, Google Ventures and these other groups, but they didn't stay for too long. And when they saw where it was going, they went to greener pastures. They wouldn't be part of something that they knew was, not up to good things. So anyways, it affects so many things. The one instance I gave you here was, we couldn't have predicted that Roe v. Wade would have been overturned, but then all of a sudden it got overturned. And then all these companies lined up, 250 CEOs lined up, all pro-abortion. Nobody says anything positive. And then I'm met with a moral dilemma. Do I say something? And then I say, yes, we're going to. And I'll tell you, my leadership, man, now they came around to back it up, actually. And besides the couple folks on the investment team I mentioned, a lot of our other leaders already agreed with it, actually. And they were really pumped up that I said something, because they said, man, I'm so proud to be a part of a company that's going to take a courageous stance. And that's just one instance, right? So we'll have all these different things happen as you're building a company, and you make decisions that have morality naturally baked into it. So if you don't have moral underpinnings with Judeo-Christian principles, how do you make your decision? You could be an atheist in the company, and I'm okay with that. But if you don't have principles you can point to, then how do you calculate how you make a right or wrong decision? Is it about what you want in the short term? Well, that's not good, because that could be in conflict with what the other is good for that other person's long-term, whatever it might be, health, freedoms. If it's better for you, you might say, well, if no one's looking, I'll just stick them, I'll stick it to them, or I'll exploit our customers. I'll exploit our investors. All these decisions happen behind the scenes, and even you put up all the rules and you put up all the code, and you say, here's our code of conduct and everything else, which we're going to do. And we have an idea of coming out with a Magna Carta of rights, and the rights are not our rights. They're the rights of consumers. So and then what we're going to do is, this is kind of inside baseball here, what we're thinking about doing, is and challenging other companies to sign this Magna Carta, because it restricts them. It says, I can't censor people. I can't do this, and I can't do this. So anyways.
I love it. Well, Peter, thank you so much for your time as you go through these things, as you talk about leadership in the industry, as you talk about the belief in entrepreneurship, free enterprise system, as you talk about personal beliefs and having that freedom of speech, that not only you don't want to restrict someone else, but you want to exercise yourself. That gives us all a lot to think about, and to land on our own, in our own belief systems, because you talk about your belief system, but you also talked a lot about how you respect and appreciate others. Doesn't mean you stop what you believe, but your job, like my job, we're here to love other people and here to think about others in a way, but that doesn't stop us from being ourselves either. So any final thoughts as we kind of bring this to a close that you'd want to share?
Yeah, I mean, look, my final thought is just is kind of it's both a warning and it's a message of hope, is that if we don't stand up and fight, we could end up like North Africa used to be all Christian. That's where St. Augustine was located, was in North Africa. That place is not Christian. There used to be 300 bishops there. Well, if you don't stand up and fight for your principles, you will lose. That is a fact. There are good guys, there are bad guys out there. If you don't stand up and fight for the principles, and one of the most courageous ways to fight is with your money. When people don't invest their money easily, right? Back it up with your money, back it up with if you're younger, entrepreneurial talent, or even older, doesn't matter. You're already still acting as an entrepreneur in even a different area here, Doug. You're out here with the podcast, getting the word out in a different area, right? Using your platform as a successful businessman, and now standing on top of that and doing something through the media side that's cutting edge. So we got to fight, and we will win though if we fight, because heaven's on our side. We just got to have courage. And that's my message of hope. So it's coupled in with the warning is that we got to step up, we got to fight. But if we do, we will win, because heaven is on our side. We just got to have the courage to do it. And then boom, we'll have that, act and God will act. I have a shirt that has Joan of Arc on it, and on the back says act and God will act. That's from Joan of Arc. She stood up, only person that did anything. She stood up courageously at 15 or 16 years old. France was completely overrun by the British, and it looked like it was all hope was gone. Even the king of France had submitted basically and resolved that it was over. And she stood up alone, and she decided, no, it's not. And she was basically responded to God. I almost think like it must have been the last person God got to, because it was like, he probably like approached a number of people. It was like, hey, I need you to stand up, you're a more likely one. But she was like a peasant farmer girl, right? And so she stood up though. And then from there, the English have not stepped one foot on the continent of Europe since. They don't even have the language of English on the continent of Europe after that. So she successfully stood up, then others stood behind her and pushed it all right off, right? So we are in a much better position than France was in that time period, and we could definitely win. But as a warning, we could end up like North Africa, and we can lose and never get it back. And our kids, our generation will also lose as well. Yeah. And the next government that will come about will not be an open government. It will be hostile to our values, because the open government that we have is grounded on Judeo-Christian principles, which are very unique and put protections against the government and against other people from encroaching upon your liberties. So it's both the happiest place to live for an atheist and for a Christian. But if you put someone in place that is, the next group and a vacuum on values, they can turn on us, and they will turn on us. And then we'll lose it all, and our kids will lose as well. But it doesn't have to be the case. We got to just step up. If we step up, we're going to win.
Yeah. I love it. Have the courage to step up and act, to take action, and the faith that it'll be supported, because it's about the future. So we can all, and I love it, happiest place for people on both sides of the spectrum.
That's it.
And that's important, that we can create this place of freedom for people to make their own choices and to find out what they believe. So, Peter Rex, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for spending the time to express with us very honestly and openly where you're coming from.
Hey, Doug, thank you for all you do. It's an honor to be on your show. And you and your family are just incredible people that I admire. So I really appreciate it.
You're very kind. So thanks to all of you for joining us as well, for Peter Rex and for myself. Thanks for joining this episode of Believe, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.